You're listening to This Week in America with Rick Bratton.
Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America. Thank you for joining us on the program. In his new book, The Human Inside, author Y.T. Cheng takes us to the 22nd century, a world that is undergoing change, bordering towards a complete dystopian setting. It's a new world. Y.T. first began work on his futuristic novel while still in college. Humor, some romance, fantasy, you'll find it all in The Human Inside by our guest on today's This Week in America, author Y.T. Cheng. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Rick. It's great to be here.
We're talking about the new book, The Human Inside, and this is really a fascinating book. And what's really interesting with this was a story that started when you were in college, as I mentioned in the beginning. Talk about that, how it started as a story, then people are telling you, this is good, you've got to get this published. How did this go from sort of this story kicking around in your head to actually getting it out there and getting it published?
This is just like one of those stories where I wasn't expecting to become a published author. But what really happened was the fact that this story idea popped up in my head one day, and I figured I remember so many details of it that I decided to write it down. And you know how whenever you go to sleep, you just you start in the middle of the dream, you never know the beginning or the ending.
Yes.
And that's kind of what happened with this story, that once I wrote it down, it just went from there. And yeah, I started this a few years ago when I was in college, and yeah, now it's become just a really, really amazing experience.
It's interesting because you dedicate the book to family and friends, and your dad was influential too, wasn't he? Didn't he tell you, if you've got an idea, go ahead and write it down?
Yeah, and that's pretty much a habit that's developed over the years. Whenever I think of something really interesting, of what may seem realistic or what may seem like fantasy, but at the same time eye-catching, then yeah, I've just written it down in notes or notebooks, and every time I go back to it, I try to apply it in some form.
Who were your influences when you were growing up? Obviously, these ideas were planted somewhere. You were a fan of looking into the future, futuristic novels like this. What were some of your influences? Who were some of your influences?
I think that most my best friends today, I have a lot of most of my high school friends were very influential. When I was younger, I didn't really have that much aspirations for life, I guess. I was in the process of discovering what it was that I wanted to do the most. But everybody else in high school and when I first started college, they seemed to know what it was that they were doing the most. And my family supported me 115% the whole way. But most of the inspiration for the creativity of my imagination probably just comes from all the books I've read. I'm a big fan of the Harry Potter series. Most of my characters are probably the number of them are based off of J.K. Rowling's characters. No stealing intention, of course, but
Right.
I'm a big Star Wars and Star Trek fan. The reason why the future is probably such a big prominent subject in my book is because I just love talking about stories where our world might be in a couple centuries away from now. And I also enjoy talking about adventure where we all have the capacity to go beyond ourselves. And I think those are really excellent stories that I think a lot of people can relate to.
Y.T. Cheng, our guest on the program. The book is The Human Inside. We'll talk about specifically what happens during that time period. But it's interesting as I'm reading this and I'm thinking, what are some of the challenges, some of the benefits in doing something that's set in the future? You're actually creating your own world, but everything that I'm reading in the book, it looks like it's rational, like this actually could happen. Talk about setting this up in the world. You're creating your own world, but you want to make it believable for the readers as well. Talk about the challenges in doing that.
I think what probably some of the challenges, I think you obviously have some if a real scientist probably did pick this up and something like that. I mean, I picked the future because you don't really know how science or technology is different in the future and stuff like that. But I think one of the big challenges is definitely when somebody just like comes up and like gives me information that proves that this might be false or something like that. Um, but at the same time, it's just like creating a new world is like for somebody of my age and like of my social circle, we just love creating like stories that like attract the attention of like we're not trying to like pass this on to like the science community as a whole. Like we want to give it to like a story of like for all ages. Um, Pretty much like in this story setting, it's post World War III, like give or take a few decades. Like the society's in the middle of rebuilding, and during this rebuilding process, like a lot of good things happen, but at the same time, it's room for bad things to happen, such as crime, and that's pretty much the whole premise for my story. Where I don't know if you know this, Rick, but like my main characters, like they're all like cybernetically enhanced teenagers that like function as a sort of like a third party heroes group that like fun- they fight like the Avengers, and then they pretty much go out and help protect people like from the dangers of the world. Like I wanted to like create a cast of characters that would probably draw the attention of other young adults, such as myself, but also like make it enjoyable for them. And also, some of the challenges they pretty much encounter is the fact that because they're technically the first of their kind of the human race to wander with enhanced abilities like mental and physical. Some of the challenges they just have to deal with is coming back to terms with their humanity as they grow and develop.
And you
Living
do
in
a nice job of emphasizing all those elements in the book, The Human Inside. YT Cheng, our guest on This Week in America. The book's available all across the country, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, at bookventure.com. If you go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, we will go ahead and link you directly to YT's website. Let's talk about Amborg Industries. That's where it starts, and this is sort of the laboratory, the interesting place where this is initiated. Talk a little bit about what that's all about.
So AI Industries, the person who actually creates my main characters, he's kind of like got the Howard Hughes like personality, but if you watch the Avengers or like you're a Marvel person, he's also got the funds and also like the personal charisma of like a Tony Stark sort of character. Dr. John Kendrick, actually, who's the owner of AI Industries, he's probably one of the most pioneering scientific minds of the world, and he comes up with the idea of perhaps one thing that the world needs is people who are desperately needed to make a change, and he basically goes out and seeks out orphans who are practically abandoned on the streets, or they're struggling to survive because deep down, this creator believes that these orphans want a chance to like fight for a better life, and it could be like their own personal life or other people's as well, like because they live in such a torn up community. AI Industries, pretty much Amborg Industries, just becomes this like home for them. And I think like just like one big challenge though is the fact that like it's all experimental. Like at this stage in time, like nobody really wants to see like technology and biology combined together in such a unique setting. And I think the big twist that everybody has to argue is the fact that they all believe that this doctor is going crazy. He's taking kids off the street and doing things illegally, when in actuality, he's actually offering them the opportunity and they volunteer for it.
With
So
the
that's
the book is called The Human Inside. YT Cheng is our guest on the program. We're talking about the Amborgs, and what is their role? What's the mission? What do they set out to accomplish?
at first, like they pretty much like develop their abilities, and when they do go out into society again as their new evolved forms, they pretty much do everything like better than what humans normally do. Like they assist the police, they help the firefighting fighters. They just have like very special like physical powers that like allow them to do like they transcend above like than what they were like used to do. Like, picture like an orphan child just stuck on the street, and they're told that they can't do anything. They're unable to like complete their education, or it's kind of like the persona of like these children, the ones who do volunteer to become these amborgs. They want to do more for like society, even though they're not in the best position to do it. But when they do become amborgs, they're lucky enough to like transcend their past. Like they remember their past, but at the same time, they just go out, they fight for what they believe is right or what should be done right. And there are challenges along the way, but the role of the amborgs is pretty much they protect and preserve humanity. They serve like people who, when they are incapable of like fighting for themselves, and there is a lot of public scrutiny for like their actions, but at the same time, they risk it all for like the hope of a better future for their society.
Where are we from a humanity standpoint? I mentioned that things have dramatically changed from that standpoint. Where are we with humanity? And it's sort of like taking it maybe to the next level that you talk about in the book, The Human Inside.
It's in a sense where like so like I said earlier, this is like probably a society where it's post World War III, like by a few decades, and like society pretty much is rebuilding. And so at this point, humanity is in the phase where like everybody's like working to discover new technologies, new ways of life. And at the same time, there's also like the criminal element, which is where as technology changes and evolves our society over time, so do the negative parts of crime as well. Humanity at this point is probably in a sense where like as the United Nations works to help fix the world, like that was pretty much like broken from a series of traumatic events. Each country is doing what it's like necessary to ensure safety for its people. And like the book is actually primarily based in the United States at this point, in the first novel, and the amborgs are pretty much like just like sort of like an experimental proposal by this Dr. John Kendrick, who wants them to be able to say, we can evolve the human race and like in a unique and better way, and this is my idea of how we could help make the world better, that sort of thing.
And as we get to the end of The Human Inside, we see this international element where there a phone call, United Nations, and people are communicating, all leaders all around the world. You mentioned in this installment, are you working on like a sequel to this now?
Yes, there is going to be a sequel and a series for this book, where pretty much the sequel actually, I wanted to make this book, the setting and the proper establishment for my characters. And then the sequel, pretty much, it brings them all back together for another like giant adventure.
Yeah, and that has to be fun from a writing standpoint, because it's almost like the second season of a television series. Now we know the characters, they've been established, we sort of understand who they are. Now we can advance the story. Is that the way you approach the second novel in this series? Is people have read the first one, they understand these people, I can now tell a little bit more complex story.
Yeah, the next one, it won't be as complex. I think that in the sequel, what I've chosen to focus on is the fact that I think character development is very important, because if you give like people a character that they just don't understand, or like it's too boring or dullish, then that's not good. But the sequel does focus on, you see a lot more character development as my characters return for this next adventure, and the whole issue with the international call is just pretty much it's a suspense building action, hopefully that draws in more people. Like, so it just lets them know that I'm not finished yet. My imagination is still writing away.
I was hoping that was the case, because it's like, okay, I don't have any more pages in the book I've got, so I'm thinking this is going to be the first of another one, and possibly several more editions of the book. The Human Inside is the story. Y.T. Cheng, our guest in the program. Book available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, at bookventure.com. You can log on directly to any of those websites by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. A couple minutes left in the program with YT. Talk about how much fun this is. I can tell in the passion in your voice. You're having a good time talking about the book and writing it as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's an experience. I mean, I encourage like every like author out there or anybody who aspires to like write. It's literally not like as difficult as you think. A lot of my friends like they were afraid that like maybe like publishers wouldn't exactly like accept my writing material or something in my story. But at the same time, like I think the writing community nowadays, it's like if you learn to self-publish, like there are a lot of publishers who are interested in helping authors like publish their books. It's not even like that big of a deal, but at the same time, it's all about how much you really put into it. I've greatly enjoyed like talking to my publisher about like my characters. I've greatly enjoyed like helping them go over like the material layouts. I was blown away by how much like they helped me. Like I'm a big fan of the cover design. Like I helped design it, but they pretty much helped me make it better. The story was all laid out. I was able to go over it as many times as that necessary just to make sure it was just right before it was published in print. And yeah, there's even a special spoiler for those of you who don't know. As an author, you also have the rights to put yourself in the book as well. So there actually is a character that is in there that is based off of me. That's like I think just one of the extra bonuses that comes with writing. And I think that this book was pretty much just like what I wanted to do was the fact that my cast of characters, if people read it, they'll notice that there aren't a lot of details about them. You only know that their names, like who they are, like briefly, just like from like a sort of a third person standpoint.
Right.
I did that intentionally just because like if any fan or anybody who ends up reading this and becoming a fan, like decides it, most of these characters should be based off of the person like reading it. So it's like a reflection of them. Choose which character you want to be, or choose which one you relate to the most based on their words or their actions. And I hope that this reaches out to as many people as possible because I want to like meet as many like other enthusiastic young writers like me. It's really not that hard. Just some of the challenges are it takes a lot of time and practice into it, but it's worth it. I would personally say that it is definitely a worthy experience for those that are just like they just want to get their completed projects out there for people to read.
Well, I can tell from your enthusiasm, this has been a labor of love, and labor may be even overextending it because it's something that you really enjoy doing. It was a great read. The first book is called The Human Inside by YT Cheng. When will the second book be ready, do you think?
I'm probably roughly about halfway done with the sequel, but once I get done consulting with my publisher, I hope to have it by the end of the year, hopefully.
That will be perfect. Just stay in touch with us, and we will let everybody know. The book's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, bookventure.com. You can link on to those websites by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. YT Cheng, our guest on the program, an excellent read. You won't be able to put it down. It's called The Human Inside. YT, it's been a pleasure having you on the program. Congratulations on success with the first book. We're looking forward to the sequel. Thank you for being with us on the program.
Oh, thank you very much, Rick. It was nice to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Once again, YT Cheng. The book is called The Human Inside. Information available at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Stay tuned. We're back after these messages.